YouTube star Brandon Buckingham had always been known as the fearless documentarian, the guy willing to stand at the edge of chaos and bring back something meaningful for his audience. He built his reputation by diving into uncomfortable places, interviewing difficult people, and exposing realities many would rather look away from. His voice, attitude, and raw authenticity earned him more than 1 million followers who didn't just watch him, they trusted him. They believed in his honesty, his vulnerability, his willingness to go beyond entertainment and give people the real, unfiltered truth. That's why when he suddenly vanished from the platform for several days, only to reappear from a hospital bed, the shock rippled instantly through his fan base like a cold wave. Late Friday night, Brandon posted a message on X that stopped hearts worldwide. It wasn't an update about a project, a teaser for a new documentary, or even a joke. It was a desperate announcement from a man in crisis. His trembling, weakened body lay in a hospital ICU bed, wires running across his chest, machines humming in the dim glow around him. In that moment, he wasn't a creator, a performer, or a public figure. He was a human being fighting for his life. In the ICU, he wrote, "My heart is failing, my lungs are failing, my liver and kidneys are failing." There was no attempt to soften it, no careful phrasing, no polished tone. It was raw survival, a plea whispered through text. He added something that felt like the emotional punch no one was prepared for. "Things are not looking good, my friends. I love you guys." Just 40 words. Yet they carried the weight of someone staring directly into the possibility that the next few hours might be his last. His fans didn't just read the message, they absorbed the fear in it. They saw the exhaustion between the lines, the vulnerability in the admission, and the haunting truth that a young man, who seemed unstoppable online, was now fighting against his own failing body. The update came after days of quiet tension. Earlier in the week, he had posted small hints that something was wrong. Severe symptoms, bizarre changes in his health, confusion from doctors, and a rapid decline that no one could explain. Still, the sudden turn toward organ failure was shocking. Even his closest supporters had assumed he'd bounce back. He always had before, but this time was different. Just 2 days earlier, on Wednesday, Brandon posted that medical specialists were scrambling to determine the cause of his collapse. They suspected tuberculosis, septic pneumonia, or liver failure, 3 terrifying possibilities, any one of which could be deadly, and together could mean a medical crisis spiraling out of control. He urged people to pray for him, something he didn't often do publicly. Brandon was never shy, but he wasn't known for making dramatic pleas. When he asked for prayers, people understood instantly that this wasn't for attention or sympathy. This was a man in real danger. Alongside the message, he shared a photograph that shook his followers. His usually bright expression was dimmed, drained of color. His face looked thinner, sunken, like someone who had been fighting something invisible for far too long. A nasal cannula fed oxygen into his nostrils, telling the silent story that his lungs, one of the body's strongest and most resilient organs, were struggling just to keep him alive. His eyes seemed tired, not in the way someone looks after a long day, but the kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting an internal war you don't fully understand. Fans responded instantly. Comments flooded in prayers, encouragement, promises that he wasn't alone. "Pray the Lord gives you the strength to get back to 100%, one follower wrote, while another simply said, "Sending prayers." Because sometimes there are no perfect words to respond to someone who is staring directly at mortality. Part of the shock came from how sudden the downturn seemed. Just days before, Brandon had told his followers that his condition appeared to be stabilizing. He said he'd been discharged from the hospital temporarily and believed he might begin to improve soon. "I'm out of the hospital for now, and my condition seems to have stabilized," he wrote. "God willing, in a few weeks I will be able to start improving." It was the glimmer of hope everyone wanted, that Brandon would recover, regain strength, and eventually return to the platform with another story of resilience. But the human body is unpredictable, and sometimes illness hides its worst intentions behind a brief false sunrise. Within days, that little spark of optimism had vanished, replaced by the chilling reality that multiple organs were failing simultaneously, a sign of systemic collapse, the kind of emergency that sends people directly into intensive care. For many fans, it felt surreal to see someone so full of life, so determined, suddenly caught in a downward spiral. They were used to seeing him on the front lines of chaotic events, confidently weaving in and out of tense situations, laughing in moments that would terrify others. Brandon had always been strong, mentally and physically. Even when he opened up about his mental health battles or the dark moments he'd endured, He still felt indestructible in some way, like he had more to give, more to say, more to create. His audience had watched him grow, struggle, rise, fall, and rise again. He wasn't just an entertainer, he was someone whose battles were shared publicly, not for pity but to give others permission to confront their own shadows. That honesty is what made his current situation so heartbreaking. This wasn't content. This was a life-threatening crisis unfolding in real time. Brandon had been open with his fans earlier in the year about how deeply he had been affected by the death of his grandmother, a woman who was a grounding force in his life. Loss changes people, and for Brandon, it left a wound that hadn't fully healed. In a message he shared months ago, he said, "I haven't been in a good place for a bit. I am struggling with my mental health." It wasn't performative. It wasn't exaggerated. It was the kind of admission people make when they've been trying to hold themselves together for too long. He continued with words that worried his supporters then and are even more haunting now. "I feel I have more people waiting for me in heaven than here on earth. I love you, Grandma. Say hi to Kyle for me. I wish I could die with you." Those words carried the weight of grief, depression, and loneliness, emotions often hidden behind the curtain of online fame. People forget that creators, even the most confident ones, often carry invisible burdens. Brandon never hid he shared his truth in all its rawness, and that transparency made his audience care for him on a deeper, more human level. Now, weeks later, knowing he's lying in an ICU bed fighting for his life, those earlier messages feel like fragments of a much larger story, a story about a man navigating both emotional and physical battles, sometimes openly, sometimes silently. Behind the scenes, his health had been deteriorating faster than anyone realized. What began as fatigue turned into shortness of breath. What seemed like an infection became something that attacked multiple organs at once. Doctors ran test after test, trying to catch the root of the illness before it spread further. But whatever was happening inside his body was aggressive, relentless, and mysterious. For someone who lived most of his life relying on his own instincts, being forced to put his life in the hands of medical specialists was a terrifying shift. Those close to him described how the sudden change hit him hard. One moment he was working, planning future videos, editing footage, reviewing scripts, and the next, he was bedridden, unable to breathe properly without assistance. There were nights when he struggled even to speak, his voice soft, his breaths shallow, and his fear impossible to hide. Hospital rooms have a strange way of shifting a person's perspective. When you're surrounded by machines that beep with every heartbeat and doctors rush in and out discussing your organs like puzzle pieces, life feels fragile in a way it never did before. Brandon's room had become a silent battlefield, with doctors fighting on one side and his failing organs on the other. And in the middle was him, exhausted, scared, uncertain if he would ever walk out of that place again.